Simon says subscribe and click on the bell icon to receive notifications.
Tables are undeniably the backbone of Access. Information is stored in one or numerous tables and organized into columns, known in Access as fields, and rows, which are referred to as records. So in Access, we need to create the tables that we need to hold the data. And these tables really form the foundation of everything that comes afterwards. And with these different tables, we can link them together to create relationships. And then we can interrogate that data using queries and reports. So let's look at a basic table. Now we're just going to reopen the file that we're going to be working on throughout the balance of this course. So let's jump to File, and I can see it in my recent list. It's this one just here, Global Tech Help Desk. Let's click to reopen. I'm getting a security warning. That's fine. I can click on Enable Content just to get rid of that. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a database for an IT help desk. So effectively a call logging and tracking system. And we're going to be using a few different tables in order to do that. So we need to really start out by thinking about the types of information that we might want to hold in those tables. For example, I might need a table that holds the actual call information. I might need a table that holds the customer details. I might need a table that holds the employee detail information, the people who actually take and deal with the calls. So let's start out by building a table that holds the call or the ticket information. Now in the course files folder, you're going to find a notepad file called ticket_example_ben_lee.txt. And this contains the details of the first record that's going to go into our table when we create it. So you can see here, let's just review the fields. We have the ticket number, we have the title. So this is really just a brief description of the problem. His printer is broken. We have the customer name, the location, the region, who that call's been assigned to in the team, who it's been opened by, so effectively who logged the call, the opened date, who it's been resolved by, the resolved date, the priority, the category, and then finally at the bottom, we have a description. So this is going to be our first record in our ticket table. So let's minimize this down and create our first table. Now, if we jump up to the Create tab at the top here, we have a group for tables. And we have two options here, Table and Table Design. And these differ very, very slightly. One of them automatically gives us an ID field and the other one doesn't. And we're going to be using both of these as we go through the course, so you can really see how they work and how they differ from the other. Now in this first table, we're just going to use the table option, and this is a new blank table. Now notice that this is the one that contains this ID field. And this is a unique identifier for each record that we add. Now we don't have to populate this with any information. It will automatically update with a unique number as we start to add records in. Now what we essentially want to do here is we want to set up the column headings first of all. So those would be things like the customer name, the ticket number, the title of the call. So to do this, we need to right click on the tab and we need to switch views. Remember, we were speaking about views in an earlier lesson. Currently we're in Datasheet view. We need to jump into Design view. Now, as soon as we try to do that, it's going to ask us to give our table a name because currently it's just called the very generic Table 1. Now, when I'm naming my tables, when I'm working in Access, I like to have a standard naming convention. So I always put on the front of my tables TBL to distinguish them from other things like queries and reports. So I'm going to call this Table Ticket and click on OK. So you can see my table over in the navigation pane. And I'm now in Design View. And Design View basically has three columns: field name, data type, and description. Now currently we have one field. This is automatically populated for us. This is the ID field, which will be assigned a unique number when we save the record. And currently it doesn't have a description. So let's add a quick description for this particular field. And remember, when I'm referring to fields, I basically mean columns. So my description is that this is the unique identifier for the ticket table. Now, another thing to note is that this ID field has a little key icon over on the left-hand side. And that means that this field is the primary key field. Now, I'm not going to get into this in too much detail because we do have another lesson dedicated to primary keys coming up very soon. But just be aware that that's what that key symbol is for the time being. So let's quickly refer back to our first ticket example. What is the first column heading or the first field? Well, it is ticket number. So in the field name underneath, I'm going to type in ticket underscore number. Now, every field that we add into our tables, we need to assign a data type. So you need to really look and think, okay, what type of data is going to go into this field or this column? Well, this is going to be a number. So if we click the drop down, and notice here the default is short text. That was something which we could see when we were in our access options. Now this is going to be a number, so I'm going to change this data type to number. And then we're going to add a description. Ticket number for this call. Now every time we add a new field into our table, we can see the field properties in the lower part of the screen. So let's run through some of the most important field properties that you might want to review and change. So for this particular ticket number field, it says field size long integer. Now this basically means that this is a very, very, very long number. Now this isn't, in general, my ticket numbers are about 6 characters long, so I'm going to change this to integer. Now these different field sizes here, you can look these up in the help files if you want a full description of what each one is, but a byte is a very small number, an integer is kind of the one that I use most often, and then we have long integer, so on and so forth. So I'm going to change this to integer, and then right towards the bottom where we have required, it's currently set to no. So what we're basically saying here is the ticket number required in order to save this record? Well, yes it is. Every call has a ticket number. So I'm going to double click to change this to yes. We then need to decide if this field is indexed or not. And again, I'm not going to go into indexing too much in this particular lesson because we're going to do that in the next couple of lessons. But indexing is basically related to how we search for records in our database. Some fields you will index, some others you won't. But the way that I look at this is, would I ever want to search for a particular call by the ticket number? Well, yes, I would. So I'm going to double click to say indexed yes, duplicates okay. So now we have 2 columns or 2 records in our table. If we switch back to datasheet view, so let's right click and change to datasheet view, it's going to ask us to save the table. Let's click on yes, and we can see how that looks. So we now have effectively 2 columns in our table, one that's going to hold the ID number and then one that's going to hold the ticket number. Relationships are one of the fundamental concepts that you need to get your head around when you're working with tables in Access. Now, relationships are really about linking different tables together. So currently at the moment, we only have 1 table in our database, but that's going to change in a moment. We're going to add some more tables. I'm going to show you how to link them together and why you might want to do that. So let's take a look at that latter point first of all, and talk a little bit about exactly what a relationship is. Now, for example, I've got 2 separate tables just here. Let's say that the one on the left is the ticket table and the one on the right is the address table. Now, these 2 tables are individual tables that are not linked together in any way, shape or form at the moment. Now, let's say that the table on the left is the main table in our database. And in the real world, this would have a lot more columns than just 3. Now I have the customer information in that table on the left. And maybe once I've built my database, I want to be able to interrogate and maybe run queries and reports that utilize the customer's address. But currently I don't have that addressing information within that main table. I do, however, have the address information in a completely separate table that we can see on the right-hand side. But because these 2 tables aren't linked, they don't interact with each other. So currently, if I was to search for the customer and I wanted to see the address information, it's not going to be able to find that because the database doesn't really know that these 2 tables are linked together. So the way that we would link these 2 tables is by using the common field. And you can see the common field here is highlighted. It is the customer field. So I can link the table on the left to the table on the right using the customer field in both because it's common between the 2 tables. Once we've done that, we then have that link, and it means that we can access the address information in the other table. Now, what if we have a slightly different situation? Maybe we have two tables, but they don't have a common field. So once again, I have my table on the left, which has ID, ticket number, and customer. We have address information in the table on the right, but there's no field that they both share to link these together. So how would we get around that? Well, this is where we would create ourselves a link table. And a link table is a table that kind of sits in between and contains a field from one table and a field from another. And we can then use that link table to bring those tables together. So you can see that example here. The link table in the middle has two fields. It has customer and it has address. And we have the customer field in the ticket table and the address field in the address table. So using that link table in the middle, we can link both of these tables together. And that's basically how relationships work in Access. And we're going to be exploring the different options we have, not only for linking tables together, but also creating link tables to link together two tables that don't share a common field. So I hope that makes things a little clearer. I will see you in the next lesson. So now we understand how relationships work, it's time to put that knowledge into action. Now, currently, we've been working basically in one table, that is ToDo Ticket. And we have quite a few columns in this table, but maybe I want to create another table that houses some additional information. So something that I don't really have in this table currently is a status field that indicates if this call is active, if it's on hold, or if it's closed. So what we're going to do is we're going to create another table that holds all of these different statuses. So let's go up to the Create tab. We're going to go to Tables and we're going to choose Table Design. Now remember, when you choose Table Design, you don't get an ID field. That's okay in this case. We're just going to have one field and it's going to be called Status. The data type is going to be short text, and if we take a look at the field properties, I'm going to take this down to 50. Is it required? Let's say yes. Are we going to allow zero length? No. Is this indexed? Well, yes, I could very well search on all calls that are closed, for example. Now, the final thing we need to do here is we need to set this field as the primary key field. Because it's the only field that we have in the table, we don't have much of a choice. So let's select it. And just above on the table design ribbon, we're going to click primary key. So now that we've done that, let's right click and switch into Datasheet view. We're going to be asked to save our table, which is fine. And we're going to call this tuple status and click on OK. So now I have my table. It's a very small table. It just has one column, one field called status. So now I can add into this table the different statuses that a call might have. So a call might be active. It might be on hold, it might be resolved, or it might be closed. So now we have two active tables. Now I'm going to close down both of these and we're going to jump across and take a look at the table relationships. So to do this, we jump up to Database Tools, we have a Relationships group, and we can jump into the Relationships window. Now currently this is empty, but if we cast our eyes over to the right hand side, notice we have an Add Tables pane. And just below I can see both of my tables. So I'm going to select both of them and we can hold down Control to select more than one and click on Add Selected Tables. And this adds the tables to the main window. We can drag and drop them if we need to reorganize them. We can also resize them if we want to see all of the fields. We can drag that down and we can really place these and give ourselves a bit more of an idea as to how these tables relate to one another. Now, currently, these tables are not related at all. So if I wanted to run a query or search for a call by its status, I couldn't currently do that because our status table isn't related or linked to anything in our main table. And just so you know, there is some database terminology for these different tables. The main table, which is normally the biggest table that has the majority of your fields in it, so for me that's ToDo Ticket, this is your fact table. And all of the smaller tables that hold additional information, these are called dimension tables. The thing with text files is that they kind of look very jumbled. But the important thing to note here is that each of the fields is separated with a delimiter. And that delimiter in this case is a tab. So if you take a look at the heading row, you can see ticket number, then we have a tab, title, then a smaller tab, customer tab, so on and so forth. Remember, tabs in Notepad files aren't always even, so we don't have the same amount of gap in between each field. It really depends on the length of the item in that particular column, let's say. And this is why it has this kind of jumbled look, because nothing is lined up. And this is important information that we need to know if we're trying to import records from a text file. Now, this time we are going to finish off the process and import these files in. So let's close this file down and let's run through the process. Now, importing a text file is fairly similar to importing an Excel file. We go up to the External Data tab, into New Data Source, from File, but this time we're going to choose Text File. Now we get the same wizard pop up, so we just need to browse to where our file is located. There it is just there, ticketinfoimport.txt, and click on Open. Once again, we're going to append the records to ToDo Ticket, which is our only table at the moment, and click on OK. We're going to save the changes and close our table. And now you can see a preview of all of the data from that text file. So this is where it differs from the Excel import, because what we need to do here is we need to tell Access where our columns are separated. And we can do that using the delimiter, which is that tab separator. So right at the top, I have delimited selected by default. And you can see here it says characters such as a comma or a tab separate each field, which is perfect. So let's click on Next. So now we get to choose the delimiter that separates our fields, and the default is tab, and that is the one that we're actually using in our text file. However, if our fields were separated with a semicolon or a space or something else entirely, we could also specify that up here as well. One important thing, make sure that you define that the first row contains your field names. Let's click on Next. We're importing to ToDo Ticket, and let's click on Finish. Once again, we get the option to save our import step. So if we plan to do this multiple times, this is a good option to choose because it's going to jump us straight to this end stage and save all of our previous settings that we just applied. I'm not going to do this because we're only importing this once in this course. So let's click on Close. And it pretty much looks like nothing has happened. So let's reopen ToDo Ticket and see if our records are there. Double click to reopen and check it out. How lovely does that look? So now we have a lot more data to work with. And what I might want to do is just go in here and maybe do some rearranging. So maybe I want to make these columns a little bit wider so I can see the full title. Maybe I want to make the priority slightly smaller, so on and so forth. I could go through, but in general, I like to organize my columns so that I can pretty much see all of my data on one page without having to scroll horizontally. Now that won't always be possible, but if you can, it's definitely worthwhile. One of the best things about having a touch device when working in OneNote is the ability to be able to take handwritten notes and then convert those to typed text. Now, whenever I want to take any handwritten notes, I always find it super useful to turn on my rule lines. So that's the first thing I'm going to do here. I'm going to jump up to the View tab. I'm going to go to Rule Lines. I'm going to say that I want wide ruled lines on my page. Now, the reason why I like to turn this on is because if I'm using some kind of stylus or a pen on a touch device, it just helps my writing stay straight. So let's jump back to the Draw tab. And what we're going to do is I'm just going to show you how we can do some handwriting and then convert it to typed text if we want to. Now, in a real world scenario, if you're going to be using a stylus, you more than likely have some kind of tablet device. And when you have a tablet device, it is pretty much just like writing in a notebook. Now, I will say that I'm using a laptop here, which has a touch screen, so my writing isn't going to be particularly neat because my arm's kind of waving around in the air. So you're going to have to bear with me. Hopefully OneNote will be able to read my very messy handwriting. So once again, the first thing you need to do here is you need to select the pen you want to use, the color, and the thickness. So I'm going to click the drop down. I'm going to go to my gallery. And for handwriting in general, I use a fairly thin pen. So I'm going to use black pen 0.35 millimeters. Let's click to select. So what I'm going to do now is attempt to do some readable handwriting. So there we go. So I hope that's legible for everybody. I did try my hardest. I'm not the greatest at this. But yeah, you kind of get the idea. So if you do have a stylus, you can take handwritten notes as if you were writing in a notepad. But the coolest thing here is that once you have handwritten your notes, you can convert them to typed text. So the first thing you need to do here is select your text. So once again, we're going to use the lasso tool and we're going to click and select all of our text. Now, once we have our handwritten notes selected, if we jump up to the convert group, you'll see that we have an ink to text option. And if I hover over, the screen tip says it's going to convert my handwriting to text, which is exactly what I want. So let's click and see what we get. And there we go. So I can see that it's pretty much got most of it right. So if you do have a lot of notes, this can be quite useful. And you can then just go through and proofread them and make any corrections that you need to make. So I'm going to switch back into type mode. I'm just going to remove that bracket. I'm going to replace that with an I. Obviously thought my I was a bracket. And then I'm going to right click and I'm just going to correct my grammatical error. So I'm going to select U. And there we go. I now have my notes as typed text. So that's a really nice little option. Now it's also worth noting that in that convert group, you also have an ink to math option as well. So it will convert handwritten mathematical expressions to text. So once again, if I go in and choose a pen, so let's do a red pen this time, and I'm just going to write out a fraction. So let's just say 1/2, like so. And what I could do is once again use the lasso select tool, select my handwritten equation and click on ink to math. And once again, OneNote is going to make a good guess at what I've written. And I can see in this case, it's got it completely right. So I'm going to say insert and it's going to convert that to typed text again for me. And I could do the same thing. So let's select another pen. I'm going to do a purple pen this time. If I was doing something like 2 + 3 = 5. I'm going to go to lasso. Let's make our selection and say ink to math. And I can see here that it's got it slightly wrong. So it's picking up Z as opposed to 2. So what I could do here is say select and correct. I'm going to select the 2. And you can see I get a list of options and 2 is one of the corrections that I'm being offered. I can also see here that I have a little dot there, but this time I'm going to click on erase. I'm going to go in, I'm just going to erase that dot out, and you can see it automatically updates that correction. Click on insert, and I now have my typed equation. And I can move that to wherever I need to move it to. So now the final thing I want to show you on this ribbon that we haven't yet covered is this insert space option. So this is a really good way of inserting or removing extra space in your pages. So if you can imagine, if you have lots of different notes on a page, all in different placeholders, if you suddenly decide that you want a bit more space underneath the title and the date and time up here, it's a bit of a pain to have to click all the individual placeholders and start moving everything down. So instead, what you can do is you can click on Insert Space. And when you hover your mouse over the page, you'll see you get this moving bar. So I can click just under where I have the title, drag down and let go, and it's going to give me that space at the top. So that's a real quick way of just adding space into your pages without having to mess around moving all of the individual content placeholders. So that is it. That is everything that you have on that Draw tab, and also how you can utilize Touch. Now the to-do item is great if you want to create like a to-do checklist. So for example, for this project, Project Artemis, there are lots and lots of different tasks that need to occur before this project can go ahead. Anything from organising which team members are going to be sent to the different locations, to booking the training rooms, organising flights and hotels, writing the training content, all of those different kinds of things. So in its most basic form, what you can do in OneNote is you can add a list of items or to-do items, utilise the to-do tag, and then check them off once they're done. So let's take a look at how this works. So I've created a new section called To-Do List, and I've called this page To-Do Items. I'm going to click my mouse right at the top there, and on the home ribbon in this tags group, you'll see that I have a to-do tag. Now, what you also might notice is that to-do also appears at the top of this tags list, and that's because it's probably one of the most popular ones you're going to use. Now, there is a keyboard shortcut to insert this particular tag of Control+1. And we haven't covered tags yet. You can see we have a lot of items in this big long list. We are going to go through some of these so you understand what they all do and how helpful they can be. For the time being, we're just going to concentrate on this first one. So let's click on To Do, and you'll see that it enters in a placeholder with a little checkbox. And I can then type in my to-do item. So assign team members to locations. If I hit the Enter key, you can see I get another to-do box. Hit Enter again, I get another one, so on and so forth. And I could carry on going, adding my different to-do items. And that's pretty much all it is. It's a very simple little utility, but it just allows you to keep track of the things that you need to do. And once they're done, you can just click in the box to tick those off. Now, you can make some very minimal modifications to how these to-do boxes look. So if I right-click my mouse, you can see I have options to uncheck the box. I can also remove the tag entirely. I'm going to talk to you about find tags a bit later on, but the one I want to go into is customize tags. So I'm going to select the to-do tag at the top, and I'm going to say modify tag. So if I wanted to, I could change the display name of this particular tag, but I can also do things like change the symbol, the font color, and the highlight color. So you have some limited customization options. So for example, if I click the symbol drop down, you can see I can change to any of these symbols. Now, I actually like having a checkbox, but it might be that I want something that looks a little bit different, maybe this green star checkbox. And you can see in the preview below what that's going to look like. It might be that I want to change the font color, so let's change that to a dark green color. And if I wanted to, I could add a highlight. Now, I don't particularly want that. I'm going to say none. And one important thing to note is it says underneath, customizations do not affect notes you've already tagged. So if I click on OK and OK again, you can see that the checkboxes I've already added aren't affected, so I'm not getting that updated formatting. But if I was to click somewhere else and then select To Do from tags, I'm going to get that new style. But of course, if I did have quite a long to-do list and I wanted to change the formatting, I could just select the current tags, jump up to my tags group, and click the newly formatted to-do tag. And that's going to replace all of those. Now, OneNote lets you draw, sketch, or write notes with your finger, a pen, or even a mouse. And you can even do things like freehand draw shapes or write equations and convert those to typed text. So the next few lessons that we're going to go through are particularly useful if you're somebody who uses a touchscreen device with a stylus. That's by far the most accurate way of handwriting notes. But just be aware, even if you don't have a touch device or a stylus, then you could, if you wanted to, still utilize these drawing tools using your mouse. Although I will say it is a little bit more difficult to get writing, shapes, things like that accurate when you're drawing with a mouse as opposed to with a pen. Now, I will also say here that if you don't have a touchscreen device with a stylus and you don't particularly think that you'll ever be trying to handwrite text using your mouse, then please feel free to skip to the next section. However, I would still encourage you to watch these reasonably short modules just so you have an idea as to the tools that you have on that Draw tab if you ever need to use them. Now, because this lesson is particularly geared to touchscreen users, I'm going to switch from mouse and keyboard mode into touchscreen mode. And this is something again that I mentioned right at the beginning of this course, so you may have completely forgotten by now. But if you take a look at my quick access toolbar, you'll see that I have a little option just here. And when I hover over, it says touch mouse mode. So this is essentially a toggle, which allows me to switch between my mouse and also touch. And what this does is it basically optimizes your screen, your interface for use with touch. It kind of gives you a bit more space to accommodate something like a finger, which you might be using on a touch device. So let's switch to touch. And you can see there exactly what it's done. If you take a look at my ribbon, I now have a lot more space in between my commands, as it's now accounting for what we like to call fat finger syndrome. Now, I am using a laptop that has a touch screen and a stylus. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my finger to jump across to the Draw tab. And this is where you'll find all of your drawing utilities. So it's great for doing things like making different types of annotation on a page, maybe circling items of importance, or maybe using the highlighter tool. And of course, you can modify the line thickness and also the color. And you can even do things like draw shapes. Now, the first thing that you'll notice when we jump onto the Draw tab is that the first command there, the one that says type, is selected because I have that grey background. So that's telling me that I'm currently in type mode. So if I was to click somewhere on this page, I can start typing and it's going to use my keyboard. Now, I'm just going to delete out what I just typed, because I want to switch into a different mode. This time I want to use my stylus to make some annotations on this particular map. And the way that you essentially switch to your pen mode is you just click the drop down arrow just here and it's going to open up all of the built-in pens in OneNote. And you'll see at the top I have a section called favorite pens. So if I use a particular pen often, I can add it to my favorites, and I'll show you how to do that in a moment. But underneath we have all of the built-in pens. We have various different colors, thicknesses, and also highlighters as well. Now the first option I want to show you is right at the bottom here, this option that says pen mode. Because when I click it, I can choose what I want to use pen mode for. So currently I'm using pen mode, which means I can use my stylus essentially, or even my finger, to create both handwriting and drawings. So I could handwrite notes and I could also draw shapes. Alternatively, I can create drawings only in pen mode or create handwriting only in pen mode. And then finally, I can use my pen as a pointer. Now I'm going to keep mine on create both handwriting and drawings. And I'm going to select one of these built-in pens from the gallery. So I'm going to choose this one just here, the red pen 1mm. And you'll see that that now gets highlighted in my drawing tools gallery. And if you look at my cursor, it's kind of changed to a red dot. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use my stylus, and maybe I want to go onto this map and just highlight something in here. So if I want to show people exactly where Liverpool Street Station is on this map, I could use my pen and I could just circle it like so. I could then use my pen to open up that gallery and maybe switch into another color. So let's do green. And this time I might want to highlight somewhere that's good to go for lunch, and that would be the brewery, and that's going to be in green. Let's click to jump into our gallery one more time, because what I also have in this last column is a bunch of highlight colors. So let's stick with the old favorite, yellow. And this time I can use that to highlight anything on this map as well. Now, next to all of my pens, I have a color and thickness option. So because I currently have a highlighter selected, it's taking me straight to the highlighter. But what I can do in here is basically change the color of the highlighter to anything that's within this gallery. So maybe I want a nice salmon pink kind of a color. Click on OK. And now you can see that that's changed. And this is going to work the same for any of these pens. So if I was to select this red, fairly thick pen, I can go into color and thickness. You can see it now has pen highlighted at the top. And I can go in and choose a completely different color. Let's do this hot pink. Click on OK. And then if I type something like that, as I said, I'm not particularly great, but hopefully you get the idea. So now I've made a whole bunch of annotations on my page. I might want to leave them there, that's totally fine, or I might want to get rid of them. So as soon as I started moving my mouse around, you can see that my mode switched from pen mode back to type mode. And I have an eraser option in here. And what I can do is choose to use a small, medium or large eraser, or even a stroke eraser. And this really depends on how big the annotations are on your page. For me, I quite like the stroke eraser, so I'm going to use that. And I can then use my mouse just to get rid of all of the strokes. And let's just get rid of everything that we added on here. So reasonably straightforward. Now the next button that we have along here is Draw with Touch. And you can see it says use pens, eraser, lasso and shape tools with your finger. So maybe you have a touch device but you don't have a stylus, you can still draw with your finger. So let's say Draw with Touch. I'm going to select a pen to use, so let's try this. Let's go for this purple colour. And this time I'm going to use my finger just to highlight something on this particular map.
Out of office status is used to notify people that you are temporarily on leave or absent from the office. You can prompt your out of office status with a message stating your reason for absence, when you'll be back, and important things to be taken care of in your absence. In Outlook, there are 2 ways to set your out of office status depending on the type of your account. Only specific types of accounts have the automatic replies option where you can easily set up the automatic replies. In other accounts where there is no automatic reply option, you can use the rules to automatically reply when you are out of office. First, let us see how to set up the out of office status in an account with the automatic replies option. Open your Outlook application. Click on File, and then click on the info and click on the option for automatic replies out of office. Select the Send Automatic Replies. This enables you to set the factors of your out of office status. You can set the time range you want your out of office status to be activated. You can also customize and personalize the message you want to send as a reply. Click OK. This enables your status to be out of office. If anyone sends you any mail during the stipulated time, Outlook automatically sends a response mail signifying your out of office status. You can see your out of office enabled from your Outlook inbox. Click on Turn Off to change your Outlook status. If you don't see the automatic replies option in File, you will have to create a template and then set up the rules for out of office. First, let us see how to create a template. In Outlook, create a new mail and draft your response. Type in the subject and body of the letter. Click on File, and then click on Save As. Rename the template. Click on the drop-down and save the draft as an Outlook template. Now that you have the template ready, let us set up the rules. Click on File, then click on Info, and click on Manage Rules and Alerts. Then click on Email Rules and click New Rule. A new dialog box called Rules Wizard opens. Click on Apply Rule on Messages I Receive and click on Next. This opens another dialog box. In Step 1, leave the checkboxes empty in which conditions do you want to check and click on Next. Excel then throws a pop-up saying this rule will be applied to every message you receive. Click Yes. This will lead to the next question. What do you want to do with the message? Select Reply using a specific template. And in Step 2, click on the underlined A Specific Template. From the Look-In drop-down, click on User Templates in File System. Select the template you want to add and click on Open. Click on Next. In the Exceptions dialog box, leave all the boxes unchecked and click on Next. This takes us to the final step of the Rules Wizard. If you want to turn on the rule now, check the checkbox for Turn on this rule. You can also turn on the rule later. Click on Finish. Click OK. Now that the template and the rules are set up, You can toggle the rule and set your status as out of office according to your needs. To set out of office, go to File, click on Info, and then click on the Manage Rules and Alerts. Under Email Rules, click your rule and click on OK.
Hi, from everyone at Simon Says It. We hope you're enjoying this training lesson. Please like this video to show your support for the channel. If you want to take your learning further, earn a certificate for this course, and gain access to over 200 courses ad-free, click up there and go to simonsaysit.com. Thanks for watching, and back to the course.
Now, if you are a project user, you may or may not be used to viewing the critical path in your projects, and you may not even understand what the critical path actually is. So that's what I aim to show you in this video. I'm going to give you a brief explanation of what the critical path is, why it's important, and how you can view tasks that make up your critical path. Now, in any given project plan that you might create, there's always going to be some tasks that are more critical to the overall project than others. And we would refer to this chain of tasks, so to speak, as the critical path. And that's all it is really. The critical path is just a chain of linked tasks, normally tasks that have dependencies, that directly affect the project finish date. So essentially, they're considered to be extremely important so that if any of the tasks on this critical path are late, it means that the whole project is going to be late. Now, the critical path isn't something that you have to physically set up for your projects. It's kind of done automatically. And then you can jump into your project and you can do things like view tasks that are on your critical path and even have multiple critical paths per project if you want to. Now, the way that project calculates the critical path is that it basically takes a look at all of the tasks in your project plan and it finds the longest path from start date to end date. Now, this path is more often than not made up of numerous tasks that are all linked together. And whilst you may have lots and lots of different paths or chains of tasks throughout your project, the one that's the longest is considered to be the critical path. So for example, if project calculates that the longest path you have in your project plan is 20 days long, and then you have a completely separate path in your project plan that's 15 days long, essentially, the path that's only 15 days long, those tasks really have 5 days worth of slack. And when I'm talking about slack, I'm referring to the amount of time that a task can be delayed without affecting the overall end date of the project. So essentially, the tasks within the critical path control the start date and the finish dates of the project, and as I mentioned, are usually linked by task dependencies. And effectively, the project is only really considered complete when the last task in the critical path is finished. Now, the critical path is also by no means static. It is constantly being recalculated by Microsoft Project, so it can change as tasks are modified or updated. And the idea of it is really to give project managers a good idea of where they need to be focusing their attention. So now we've explained what the critical path is, let's take a look at how we can identify it and also view the tasks that are contained within the critical path. Now I have open on the screen here a project that I've created. It's a project to organize a wedding. And this project contains lots of different tasks and subtasks. Now, before I do anything here with the critical path, there is one setting that I need to go in and check. So I'm going to jump up to File. I'm going to go all the way down to Options and into the Advanced area. And if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, it's this last item here, tasks are critical if slack is less than or equal to, and I just want you to double check that you have 0 days in there. So that's the first thing you need to do before you go any further. So now I've done that, what I want to do is I want to jump into the Gantt chart view and see which tasks are on the critical path. So to do that, I need to jump up to the View tab and I need to change the way that I'm looking at my project. So in the data group here, I have a tables drop down, and I'm going to switch this from the cost table to the schedule table. And what you'll see now is at the top it says critical path. It's showing me how much free slack and also how much total slack. Now currently I'm still viewing all tasks. What might be more helpful for me to do here would be to only show the tasks that are on the critical path. So what I can do is again go back to my data group, go to this filters area, click the drop down, and I'm going to say critical. So that is essentially showing me my critical path and all of the tasks that are located within that critical path. Now, critical tasks can also be identified directly on the Gantt chart as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of backtrack out of what I've just done. So I'm going to remove this filter and say no filter. I'm going to go back to my cost table and make sure that I'm in Gantt chart view, which I am. So if I want to identify my critical tasks directly on the Gantt chart, all I need to do is jump up to my Gantt chart tools contextual ribbon, click on the Format tab, and in this bar styles area, you can see the top little checkbox there says critical tasks. And it's going to highlight on the Gantt chart all of those tasks which are critical. Now the final thing I want to show you in this video is how you can just turn on the setting to calculate multiple critical paths. So it's worth noting you're not just limited to showing one critical path in Microsoft Project. You can choose to display a critical path for each independent network of tasks within a project. So if you do want to display multiple critical paths, you just go up to File. We're going all the way back down to Options, into that Advanced tab again, and once again it's one of these settings that we have at the bottom. It's the second one from the bottom, Calculate Multiple Critical Paths. I'm going to put a check in there, click on OK, and I'm now seeing multiple critical paths. So hopefully that's given you more of an idea of exactly what a critical path is, how Project calculates the critical path, how you can view it, and all of the tasks within the critical path. So let's start out by assigning resources to tasks in the Gantt chart view with the entry table. Now currently you can see the entry table. If I grab the divider just here and drag this across a little bit, it's going to reveal another column underneath, which is the resource names column. And this is where we can see any resources that are currently assigned to our tasks, whether that be a work resource, a material resource, or a cost resource. So we can directly assign resources to specific tasks from this column. So if we take a look at task number 4 here, send outline to training team for review, that's going to be a task that is completed by the training team lead. So all we need to do is click the drop down arrow in the resource names and we can see all of our resources just here. So I can select training team lead, and if I wanted to, I can select more than one, click away, and that is one way to assign a resource to a task. Really straightforward. Now, if I take a look at the task below, update course outline, I can see that I've got this assigned to the training team lead. Now, this is actually going to be done by the IT trainer because the training team lead in the previous task has sent the outline to the training team. So let's click the drop down. I'm going to remove this resource by deselecting and select IT Trainer and click away. Now the next task, task number 6, is again going to be completed by the IT Trainer. So what I can actually do is copy the resource name to the cell below. If we hover our mouse over the corner of the cell above until we get that little crosshair and then simply drag down, it's going to copy that resource assignment. So that is method number 2 for assigning resources quickly. Now the next task, approving the outline, that's going to be done by the training team lead. So let's take a look at the third method we can use for assigning resources. We can do it from the Assign Resources dialog box. So I'm going to make sure I have the task selected in the entry table. Let's jump up to the Resource tab and Assign Resources. So now we get this little Assign Resources dialog box, and notice at the top here where we have resource list options, if we click the plus, this allows us to filter any of our resources below. So I could choose to filter by all resources or specific resource categories, like maybe I just want to see all of the material resources. If I select that from the drop-down, I'm just going to see those. It's worth noting that we can also filter by resources and the amount of hours that they're available to work. Now, to assign a resource, we simply need to scroll through the list. I'm going to find IT Trainer, and then we just need to click on Assign. If I need to assign more people, I can simply go through, select, and click Assign again. And if I want to select multiple resources from this list, I can simply hold down Control and then click Assign. Now, another way that we can assign resources is by using the task form. So let's go to the Task tab. We're going to click the drop down underneath Gantt chart and switch across to Task Form. So now we can see all of the resources. We can simply click in Resource Name and select a resource from the drop down list. So I'm going to add the Training Team Lead as well. And then when I click on the OK button, you can see it automatically fills in the units, which is 100%, which means 100% of the training team lead's time is going to be dedicated to this task. And then we can see some of the other costs listed out here. Now I'm going to switch back to Gantt chart view very quickly, and let's scroll down towards the bottom just here. Now I'm going to go to the venues section, and where we have book venue just here, I'm going to assign another resource. And this time it's going to be a material resource. So let's go back into task form view. I can see that I've got two resources assigned to this. Let's click underneath, and I'm going to add the sandwiches resource. So when I book the venue, I want to make sure that we have some kind of lunch organized for the delegates. And we're going to need a few sandwiches here, so I'm going to request that we have 2 packs of sandwiches. So I'm going to type 2 into the units column, and notice what happens when I click on OK. It adds the material label, in this case 2 pallets of sandwiches, and it also updates the costs. So I can see that 2 pallets of sandwiches is going to cost $60. Now, the final way that we can add resources is via the Task tab and the Information button. So if we click on Information and go to the Resources tab, we can start adding in resources in here as well. So we just select them from the drop-down and enter in the units if required. Summary tasks help us organize our project, and they also give our project structure. Summary tasks can represent different phases of a project or even different groups of tasks. And by design, when we create a summary task, we can have subtasks of that overall summary task. So let's start out in this example by inserting some new summary tasks for existing tasks in our project. So I've added a few more tasks in here. I've set the duration, start and finish times, and if they have predecessors. You'll also see that we have a bit of a mixture of automatically scheduled and manually scheduled tasks. So if I take a look at the different tasks that I have in this project, I might want to divide these up into more manageable sections. As I said, creating summary tasks allows us to focus on just what we're interested in at any given time, and it also makes our project easier to read, easier to understand, and it gives it structure. So we're going to split this project up into a few different sections. So what I'm going to do first here is I'm going to select all of the tasks that belong to the first section. And our first section is going to be called Preparation Phase. So let's hover our mouse over where we have task 1 until we can see that little black arrow. I'm going to click, and then I'm going to drag down to select all of the tasks that belong to this first phase. So that is basically going to be tasks 1 to 7. Let's go up to the Task tab, and then in the Insert group, we have a Summary option. And this is going to allow us to insert a summary task. Now check out what's happened to our table just here. We now have new summary task at the top, and the other tasks are now effectively subtasks of this summary task. So let's give our summary task a name. We can click in the field, and this is going to be called Preparation Phase. You don't have to put it in caps, that's just how I've chosen to lay these summary tasks out. Now notice that as soon as I do that, I get this little black triangle next to the summary task. So this is a collapsible and expandable group now. I can click on the little arrow and it's going to collapse up all of the subtasks. Click again and it's going to expand them all out. Also notice with this summary task, if we check out the timeline, summary tasks are represented by a black bar. Now the duration of the summary task is very much defined by the durations of the subtasks below it. So the summary task is basically going to show us the duration when we add up all of these subtasks below. And the start and finish dates for the summary task again is going to be determined by the subtasks below. So the start date that you see up here for this summary task is going to be the start date of the earliest task in this group. And the finish date is going to be the finish date of the latest task in this group. So we don't really have to go in and edit anything for summary tasks because it's all determined by the subtasks below. And the reason why these summary tasks are quite nice is because at a glance you can see exactly how long this preparation phase is going to take. I can see it's going to take 18 days. I can see we're starting on March the 1st and the preparation phase is going to come to an end on March the 27th. So it gives you a really nice high-level overview. Let's add in some more summary tasks. So this time I'm going to select tasks 9 to task 17. Let's click on Summary once again. This is going to be the recording phase. And this time you can see the duration for this entire phase is 69 days, and we can see the start and end dates. And check out how that reflects in the timeline. Let's select tasks 19 to 24. Click on Summary. This is the documentation phase. And then finally, we have the Go Live phase. So all of the subtasks are indented under their relevant summary tasks. And we can collapse up any that we're not interested in, which helps us remove the noise and really just focus in on the tasks that are of interest to us. Now notice that when we've added in these summary tasks, by default they are automatically scheduled summary tasks. But we can also have manually scheduled summary tasks as well. And manually scheduled summary tasks are sometimes quite good for showing us if we have enough time to get subtasks done. So I'm going to add in another summary task, and this is really just for demonstration purposes. I'm going to delete it straight away afterwards. But let's say I want to insert another summary task just here. So I'm going to highlight task 15. Let's go up to summary, and I'm just going to add in here editing phase. And I'm going to switch this to a manually scheduled summary task. Now currently the editing phase summary task only has one subtask, which is make video amendments. And the make video amendments task ends on June the 29th. So the summary task above reflects that as well. Now check out what happens if I go into this summary task and modify the duration. I'm going to take this down to 2 days. Now notice what happens here. I've got a red squiggly line underneath the finish, and if we check out the timeline, notice that it's showing in red. And that's basically telling me that the summary task is set to end before its subtask, in this case, completes. And this is probably something that I'm going to need to look at. Now, this doesn't generally tend to happen with automatically scheduled tasks, but sometimes when you're working with manually scheduled summary tasks, this problem might pop up. So it's good to know what it means and how to fix it. So now I can see that this is in red. I can see, okay, I've set 2 days for the editing phase, but we only have one subtask here, and that is 4 days long. So it's going to finish after the end of the summary task. Now I'm just going to take this back up to 4, which is an easy fix. As soon as I do that, you can see that it changes back to how it was previously, a teal bar with the summary task showing just above. Another type of task we can add into our project plan are milestone tasks. And milestones really show key points in a project. They might be there to show progress, completed deliverables, or decisions or triggers. And milestone tasks don't have any duration, so we can add as many as we need into our project. So let's add a couple in because these are very simple and straightforward. Now notice that I've made a couple of changes to this project since the last lesson. I've added in a few more tasks. and the majority of these have predecessors and are automatically scheduled tasks. The final one at the bottom, where we finalize the course outline, you can see I have a little note in there. It's a manually scheduled task, and I don't really know the duration or the finish dates yet because I'm waiting on approval from the training manager. So I'm going to add in a milestone task for when this course outline is approved by the training manager. So I'm going to select task number 6. And another little side note here, when you're selecting tasks, click on the task number all the way over on the left-hand side. That's going to select the whole task as opposed to the individual fields if you were to click in any of these. So we're going to click on task number 6. Let's go up to the task tab, and all the way over in the insert group, we have a milestone option. So let's click to add a milestone task. Now notice that's inserted above where I was clicked, and we just have the default text of new milestone. Now notice that the duration is 0 days. As I said, milestone tasks don't have any duration, so it's always going to default to 0 days. And now we can rename this milestone. So I'm going to click in the field, and this is going to be outline approved. Now this milestone task relies on task number 5, the task before, being completed. So let's add in a predecessor. Once again, we can click the drop down, and I'm going to choose task number 5. Click on OK, and now check out the timeline. Milestones are represented with this little diamond icon. So let's zoom in so you can see that a little bit clearer. If we scroll across, we have a little diamond icon there, and it's showing me the date of this key milestone. And this milestone task doesn't change at all unless you manually move it. And milestone tasks don't increase the project duration in any way or reflect on the work or resource time. So now that I have that milestone, I can update the information for task number 7. So the duration is going to be 1 day, but I now know the date that this task can start. So we're going to change this to the day after the outline has been approved. So that is going to be March the 25th, but check it out. The 25th is a Saturday. So we want to set this to the next working day, which is going to be the 27th. And if we take a look at the timeline, we can see that change has now been reflected. And it's also worth noting that you can create predecessors for milestone tasks as well. So I'm going to make the milestone task a predecessor of finalized course outline. So if we click the drop down, there it is, task number 6, outline approved. Let's click, and that's now updated in the schedule. I'm going to show you in this lesson how you can very quickly just create a little practice site. Now we are essentially skipping a little bit ahead here because I haven't even really introduced SharePoint to you yet, and already we're straight into it, creating a new site. So if you feel you would prefer to maybe work through the first section of this course and then come back and create the practice site, then again, please feel free to do that. Now I'm currently in my SharePoint team site, and this is essentially my start page. And it's from this page that we can create ourselves a brand new site. So to do that, all you need to do is go up to this Create Site button in the top left-hand corner. Let's click it, and then we can choose what type of site we'd like to create. Now, I don't want to delve too much into this at this early stage. I really just want you to get up and running with a practice site. So the one that I'd like you to select here is Team Site. Now you need to give your site a name, and I don't mind what you name it. You can name it whatever you like, just something that you're going to be able to identify easily. So you might want to do something like your initials, and then maybe practice site. And the only other thing I really want you to check on this page at this stage is the privacy settings. So for this one, I'd like you to set it to private and then click on next. Now, I don't want you to add any additional owners or any members of your site at this stage, so I'm happy for you just to click finish. And there we go. It is as simple as that. So I'm currently on the home page, and if I want to take a look at my site permissions from here, all I need to do is click on the little cogwheel in the top right hand corner. From the drop down list, I'm going to select Site Permissions. And from here, I can then see the 3 different groups. We have site owners, site members, and site visitors. Now what I'm going to do here is right at the bottom, we have an advanced permissions setting. Now I'm going to dive straight into there because this allows me to see each of my 3 groups in a bit more detail. And you can see in the permission levels column exactly what each group can do. So for members, they can edit, owners have full control, and visitors have read-only access. So what if we want to add a particular user to one of these groups? Well, it's very straightforward. All we need to do is open the group. So I'm going to open the members group. And then from these little options that we have running across the top, if we click the new drop down, we can add users to the group. So all I need to do now is type in the email address of the person I want to add, and I'm just going to add myself. And I can include a little message if I want to as well. Then click on Share. And it's that simple. Now, what about if we want to do the reverse? What if we want to remove somebody from a group? Well, all we need to do is select that person. So I'm going to select myself up to the Actions drop down. And right at the bottom here, we have a Remove Users from Group option. Let's select it and say, okay, yes, we do want to remove this person, and they're gone. Now, one thing that's extremely important to note, if you are the owner of a site, so I'm the owner of this particular SharePoint site, don't remove yourself from the owners group. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself running into all kinds of different problems. Now, another scenario that you might have is maybe these 3 groups don't particularly fit the permission levels that you want to grant a specific group of people. Well, if that is the case, then you can set up your own permissions group. And we can do that from here as well. If we jump up to the permissions ribbon, in the first group here, we have a little button, Create Group. And we can now go in and define the group settings. So maybe I want a specific level of permissions for everybody who works in the marketing team. So I'm going to call this Marketing Team. The owner, well, I'm happily going to keep that as myself. I want only the group members and the group owners to be able to view this group. And then I can choose if I'm going to allow requests to join or leave this group. And you can either choose yes or no there, depending on what you need. And then right at the bottom is the good stuff. This is where we define what level of permissions to give this group to this SharePoint site. Now in here, we do have the 3 defaults as well. So full control, that's normally assigned to owners of the group. Edit, that's in general what members will have. And then read is what normally gets assigned to site visitors. But then we have 3 additional groups in here. We have a design group, and anybody who has this level of permission can view, add, update, delete, approve, and customize. We have a contribute group. They can view, add, update, and delete list items and documents, and then a restricted view group. So this group can only view pages, list items, and documents can be viewed in the browser, but not downloaded. So you have 3 additional groups here that you could assign. So I'm going to say that the marketing team is going to be adding, updating, deleting. They might do a little bit of customization and approvals. So I'm going to set them up with the design level access. I'm now in my new permissions group called Marketing Team, and currently I'm the only member. And of course, you can add users in exactly the same way. Just type in their email addresses and it's going to send out an email invite. So that is it. Pretty straightforward when it comes to managing your permissions and adding and removing users. So far, we've been looking at site permissions. And one thing to remember is that these are site-wide permissions and they apply to the whole site. So when we add a user to a group, we're giving them access to the entire site. If we remove a user, we're taking away their access from the whole site. But we can also get a little bit more specific when it comes to permissions. For example, different permissions for specific libraries or lists. So let me show you an example. I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to go into one of the document libraries that we created towards the beginning of this course. I'm going to jump into user guides. Now, the way that permission groups kind of work in SharePoint is that the site-wide permissions are essentially the parent permissions. And then permissions to the individual libraries and lists are assigned accordingly. And unless you specify, they're going to inherit the permissions from the parent. So what if I want to give a specific group of people certain permissions to this particular document library only? Well, this is where I can set specific permissions for a document library. And I will say that this works exactly the same if you want to do this for a list. So all you need to do is go into the library, jump up to the cogwheel in the top right hand corner, and in the list of menu items, you'll see that you have library settings. If you're in a list, this will say list settings. So now I'm in my settings for this particular library. And in the middle here, we have a group called permissions and management. And the second option down says permissions for this document library, which pretty much sounds like we're going to find what we need in there. And here we go. Here are my 4 different permission groups. Remember, we have the 3 defaults, members, owners, and visitors, and then we have the one that I just created in the previous lesson for the marketing team. If you take a look up at the permissions ribbon, you can see we have a big button there that says Stop Inheriting Permissions. So what I can essentially do here is I can break the connection between this library and the overall site. So let's click Stop Inheriting Permissions. I get a little warning message. It says you're about to create unique permissions for this document library. Changes made to the parent site permissions will no longer affect this document library. Well, that is exactly what I want to do. So let's click on OK. So now that I've broken that connection, it's telling me that this library now has unique permissions. And what I can do is if I want to adjust the permission levels for each of these groups for this specific library, I can do that. So maybe I want to select the marketing team and change their permission level for this library. So back up to my ribbon and I can click Edit User Permissions. It's telling me at the top here that this is for the marketing team. Currently they are in the design permission group, but I can now come in and maybe change them to something else. So maybe I just want them to have read access instead in this library only, and click on OK. And I can carry on going and modifying permissions for any of these other groups. Just always remember that you're only changing the permissions for this specific document library. Their permissions in other parts of the site will remain the same as they were originally. And if you decide at any point that you want to re-establish the link between the document library and the overall site, you can delete unique permissions. And you can see now for marketing team, the permission level has gone back to design because it's now inheriting those permissions from the parent. So at the moment in this Teams channel, the general channel, I'm talking with all the members of my team. Now it might be that I want to just have a one-on-one conversation with someone, or maybe I want to just have a small group conversation outside of these team channels. So if you want to start private messages, you need to jump across to the dedicated chat tab. So if you look in this left-hand menu, you'll see the second option down is chat. And you can see here, I already have one private chat going with Adam. And this was from a few days ago. And you can see I sent him the sales presentation, which might have been a confidential document, which is why I didn't want to put it into the channel. Now, as we saw previously, at the top here, we have chat, which is currently highlighted. And we also have a files tab. So any documents, files, presentations that have been shared in your private chat will be listed underneath here. And you can see that there is that sales presentation, really nice and easy for me to access. But let's jump back to chat for the time being. So if I want to start a new private chat, all I need to do is jump up to this new chat icon that you'll see to the left of the search or the command box and click on new chat. So it opens a new chat window and it's asking me to type in the name of the person or the group of people that I want to chat with. So I'm going to chat with Ryan and I'm going to type him a message. So as you can see, I'm now into my private conversation with Ryan, and I'm just checking to make sure that the feedback that I gave him on something that he'd taken a while to put together didn't come across as overly critical. So this might be something that I didn't want to put in the regular chat channel, that I wanted to discuss with him in private. So it's worth noting that private conversations are not just one-to-one conversations. You can add up to 9 people into a private chat conversation. It's just more for things that you don't necessarily want to discuss in the open in your team channels. Now, if I start a new chat conversation here, you'll see here that it opens up the new chat. And if I then decide that I no longer want this chat, I have my 3 dots and I can just say discard, which will get rid of that chat. And the same thing with more established chats. If I click the 3 dots, I have a few different options in here. So I could choose to pin this chat to the top if it's an important chat conversation. I could also add to my favorite contacts if I wanted to. And you'll see next to where we have recent chats, we have a contacts tab. So this is where I have my favorite contacts, and I can click the 3 dots and I can add a contact to this group as well. So let's add in Vicky, like so. You also have a link at the bottom to create a new contact group. So again, I could click that and I could maybe call this leadership. So I now might want to add some people into my leadership group. I can click the 3 dots, add contact to this group. I'm going to add Adam. And I'm also going to add Ben, like so. So not dissimilar to Outlook in many ways. So let's jump back to recent, and I'm actually going to come in and I'm just going to unpin that conversation. Now, one interesting little option that you have within here is this notify when available option. So essentially what I could do is I can see from his status symbol here that Adam is currently away. But if I have something really important to talk to him about, I might want to be notified as soon as he comes available. So really straightforward to have private conversations. And something that leads on quite nicely from this is what we'll be discussing in the next section when we take a look at video and audio calling. If you look in the top right hand corner, you can see that we have a video call button and an audio call button as well. So if I'm in the middle of a conversation with Adam and then we decide that this might be easier if we just quickly do a video call, we can very easily convert our typed chat conversation into a video call by clicking this button. I'm not going to do that now. We're going to save that for section 3. But the final thing that I will show you that you can do here is that you have an add people button. So if I want to now pull Vicky into this conversation, I can very quickly add Vicky like so, and it will create a new conversation for myself, Adam and Vicky. So super simple to navigate around the chat area. I want to show you how you can join an existing team that you didn't create, and also how join requests are handled. So if somebody requests to join a team that you've created, where you go to see those requests and how you accept them. Now, if you recall, we created this Friday Drinks Crew team, and this was based off of an Office 365 group. And the members of this team are all people who were members of the Office 365 group. And this is a private group, so anybody who wants to join this group is going to need to request access. So it might be that I want to invite Adam to the Friday Drinks Crew private group. So what I essentially did was I clicked the 3 dots and I selected the Get Link to Team option. So this gives me a direct link to this team. I copied it and then I pasted it into an email and I sent it to Adam. So as soon as Adam received that email, he clicks on the link. It asks him to join the group and then it tells him that his request is pending, because I need to go and approve this request because it is a private group. So where do all of these pending requests live? Well, again, if we click on the three dots and jump to Manage Team, you'll see running across the top, you have a section for pending requests. And you can see there is Adam waiting patiently for me to either accept or deny his request. So I'm going to say accept, and he's now been added as a team member into this particular team. So pretty simple to accept requests. Now, another way that you can get people to join your team is by generating a team code. Now, we're going to stay in this screen. I'm going to jump across to Settings, and you'll see that there is an option here for team code, and it says share this code so people can join the team directly and you won't get any join requests. So whoever you send the team code to, they can join the team using the code. And it just means that you're not getting loads and loads of requests come into pending, which you then have to go in and check and approve or deny. So in order to generate a code for any of your teams, if you click on Settings, expand Team Code and click the Generate button. And you can see there we go. I could then copy that to my clipboard, jump across to my mail, and compose a new message with the team code. And then essentially they can use that code to join the group. So now let's look at this in reverse. I'm back in my Outlook email, and I can see that Adam has sent me a code to join the customer service group that he's created. So I'm going to double click and copy that code, Control C. I'm going to go back to Teams and I'm going to click on the Join or Create a Team link. And you can see here the first thing we have is join a team with a code. I'm going to click and I'm going to paste that code in and I'm going to say Join Team. And there we go. You can now see that the customer service team has been added to my teams list.
When you start a meeting or when you join a meeting and you are the host, you have control as to who is essentially held in the lobby prior to the meeting commencing. So you might choose in your settings to hold certain groups of people in the lobby until the meeting begins. But now Microsoft have added a new lobby setting that lets people invited to the meeting to bypass the meeting lobby. So basically, anyone who receives an invitation, and that includes a forwarded invite, will join the meeting directly. They won't have to be held in that lobby. Now, it is worth noting that this doesn't include distribution lists. People must be invited individually. And another thing that's important to note, because you might be confused if you can't see this setting when we jump into a meeting, is that this isn't available for channel meetings. So in order to see this setting, it must be a meeting that's been started from the calendar. And that's exactly what I'm going to do here. So you can see that I have a project meeting scheduled. I'm the host. I'm going to join this meeting. And I'm just going to mute my microphone and click on Join Now. So I am now in my meeting. And in general, if I want to use a setting like this, I'll log in maybe 10 minutes before the meeting start time, and I'll jump in here and I will change my settings. So if we click on the three dots for more actions and go into meeting options, this is the setting you need to change. So where it says who can bypass the lobby. What you'll notice is that in this drop down, we now have an additional menu item which we can choose. And that is this one here, People I Invite. So if I set this option and then click on Save, so what this means is that anybody that I've sent a direct invite to will completely bypass the lobby and come directly into the meeting. Now, as I mentioned there, that option will only be available if you start your meeting from your calendar. It's not available in channels. So just to make that abundantly clear, let me show you what I mean. If I jump back to Teams and let's go into the Q1 planning channel, for example, and I'm going to say Meet Now. And let me just mute my microphone and just join this meeting. So this meeting has essentially been created in the Q1 planning channel for Northwind traders. So now if I jump up to those three dots for more actions and go into meeting options, if I click the drop down underneath who can bypass the lobby, you'll see that I don't have that option that we had when we were joining from the calendar. Okay, so that is the difference between the two. You don't have access when you're creating the meeting from the channel, but you do if it's from the calendar.
If you're not a subscriber, click down below to subscribe so you get notified about similar videos we upload. To see the full course that this video came from, click over there. And click over there to see more videos from Simon Says It.